have to point out that today's reading and the verses surrounding it answer the question, Mary, did you know? This is possibly my least favorite Christmas song, because if you read the Bible, this song becomes irrelevant. Mary knew. Mary knew. It was made very clear to Mary. She knew. And actually, when the angel comes to her to tell her, letting her know, the angel says, "Do not be afraid." This is a pretty common refrain in the Bible, right? We hear this a lot. And I actually was reading a piece this week that said somebody went to the trouble of counting, and I have not checked the math, but apparently, do not be afraid, do not fear, something along those lines appears 365 times in the Bible. This is a very convenient number for us, isn't it? And the person who did the counting actually has a book of, I think it's like a daily devotional of 365 fear nots for your daily life. And I think that this is such a powerful thing to think about. I'm pretty sure every time an angel of the Lord appears, they say, "Don't be afraid." And, that's sort of like when your child comes up to you and they're like, "Don't be mad." So when the angel says, "Don't be afraid," I'm pretty sure your first thought is, why? What is coming next? What is the next thing I'm going to hear that's going to make me afraid? And so I'm getting this little word of comfort before it comes. Now, both Mary and Elizabeth through Zechariah, and Mary herself have received messages from messengers from God that reasonably cause them to fear. Both of them are pregnant, and in and of itself, pregnancy is a frightening time. I think anyone who's ever been pregnant with a child that they wanted lived in a certain amount of fear that pregnancy might go well, that child might be healthy. There's a lot of fear in pregnancy. And imagine how much fear is involved in pregnancy and parenting today when we have ultrasounds and blood tests and, just like stethoscopes even, and Doppler to hear the baby's heartbeat and all of these things to comfort us. And we still fear in pregnancy. And here are two women at a time much less technologically advanced who are pregnant. In our modern age, 1 in 5 pregnancies ends in miscarriage. That is a large number of pregnancies that do not become children. I cannot imagine, and I don't know for sure, but it must have been higher back then. Because we did not have, the sort of medical technology that we have today to keep us healthy, to help our bodies function at their peak. Pregnancy is a time of fear. And so these angels come and they say, "Don't be afraid, but you're going to have a baby." Now, for most of us, our fears around children, childbearing, and all of that are either pretty urbane, like we're afraid of the usual things. We're afraid of a baby getting pneumonia. We're afraid of, the kids not doing well in school. Or they're irrational, right? We're afraid of a dragon coming and stealing our children in the night. Or, we have these silly irrational fears. They happen, and we know that they don't make sense, but they're there anyway. But for Mary and Elizabeth, with this great honor of who their babies would grow up to be, came completely rational and not at all ordinary fears. Neither of their children died peacefully in their old age. Neither of their children went along and got along with societal expectations. Neither of their children married some nice person, settled down, had families of their own, and provided for their parents in their older years. And yet, both of those children proclaimed the good news. They followed, or they were, God's call. And they have been remembered for thousands of years. But for Mary and Elizabeth, in those preparatory months of pregnancy, awaiting the births of these God-sent children, there must have been great fear. And yet today we sang Mary's song, the Magnificat. Her soul magnifies the Lord. This is not a song of fear at all. This is a song of joy, of triumph, and of certainty. And this is another thing that I think we have in common with our ancestors in the faith. We have fear like they did, but we sing songs of triumph in the face of that fear as well. I was thinking recently about 2 winters ago when a bunch of us clergy were up in Newark, over in Newark. Where are we in relation to Newark? Over-ish in Newark. It's up from my home. But at any rate, we were in Newark and marching down the street in the snow. It was very epic. Carmine recently described it to somebody as, you know that scene in Braveheart? It wasn't quite that epic, but it was, it was a powerful moment. It was like a whole herd or gaggle, I don't know what you call a bunch of clergy, but there were a lot of us there, and we were marching and we were singing, and we were marching towards the federal building in hopes that we could sway the hearts and the decisions of those inside the building who were trying to deport a gentleman who himself was a grandfather who had been in this country for decades, owned a home, paid taxes, and they were trying to deport him, and we were marching up against what seemed hopeless, and there was a lot of fear in the crowd, because some of the people there, I've only known Catalino for a few months at that point, but some of the people there had known him for years, and we were afraid that he would get deported. And if deported, he was certain to die, either by violence in his home country or by lack of medical care, because he had some health conditions that needed monitoring. And so, in this moment of fear, totally reasonable, extreme kind of fear, we sang songs that proclaimed a truth that had not yet happened. I mean, I'm sure some of you know these songs, "We Shall Overcome." We've all heard that. "We shall not be moved." And there's one that I particularly love that isn't quite as popular, but I learned growing up. It's from the South African anti-apartheid movement. And it's "We Shall Not Give Up the Fight." And there's a verse in "We Shall Not Give Up the Fight" that says, "Together we'll have victory, hand holding hand, hand holding hand, hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory, hand holding hand, hand holding hand, hand holding hand. We shall not give up the fight, we're bound to win, we're bound to win. We are bound to win, we shall not give up the fight, we're bound to win. We're bound to win, We are bound to win. So we march in this sort of epic moment of, it's snowing and we feel very, very cool in our moment of marching, but also very moved, regardless of the weather, by the man for whom we are marching, that we're trying to keep in this country. And we fear, but at the same time we sing these songs that show no fear, these songs that proclaim a victory that we have not yet won. And this line, this verse from We Shall Not Give Up the Fight, is what really brings it together for me. Together, we'll have victory. Together. Because if you think about when Mary sang her song, she didn't sing it to the angel, alone with a messenger from God in her rooms. She didn't sing it with Joseph, who she would be making a life with and raising this child with. Mary sang this song. Mary felt this joy so strongly that she could not contain it. When she came together, hand holding hand with Elizabeth, someone who was feeling the same fears, someone who had received the same good news that was good but challenging, someone who had the same faith as she did, and someone who had the same hope and vision for a victorious future. They join together in this community of two, but it's enough. A community made of shared kinship, shared worry, shared faith. And they overcome their fear. They face that fear. And Mary breaks into a song that is defiant of that fear. She sings a song of victory as if it had already happened. Joy as if they were already holding their children in their arms. Mary's song of victorious joy is not because she no longer fears, but it is in spite of her fear, in community with others who share her fears and her hopes and her faith, in community with others who have also heard the promises that God has made. And this is what we do. When those of us who gather on the streets, this is what we do. When those of us who gather for worship, this is what we do. If any of you are living without any fears, I would like to talk to you and know your secrets. But I'm fairly certain that none of us here are living a life absent of fear. But we do not let that fear take us captive. We do not let that fear rule our lives. We try not to, right? And one of the strongest ways we have of keeping ourselves from being imprisoned in our fears, beaten down by our fears, is coming together in community. Some of our fears may be unique to us, but we probably all have some of the same ones as well. People tend to worry about the same kinds of things. And we can share our worry with each other when we come together. Tomorrow night, we will sing songs of defiant victory. Some people call them Christmas carols. joy, songs of hope, songs of Jesus who has come to be with us, to be one of us. These are like the Magnificat. These are songs that despite our fear, despite our worries, despite our uncertainties, when we come together and we sing these songs and we hold hands, we hold each other in our hearts, we can know that joy, that hope. We can proclaim that good news as if it has already happened, because it has. And we can know that it will continue to happen. We will hear tomorrow night the news we already know, that Jesus has been born. But remember, too, that just as Jesus was born on a particular night, in a particular place, at a particular time, Jesus the Christ is born in each of us. A fancy title for Mary is the Theotokos. It's fun to say. Theotokos. It's Greek, it means God-bearer. We are Marys. We are God-bearers. We can all be the Theotokos. We may not be pregnant with a baby, but we can be pregnant with hope and good news for the world. We can be so filled in our coming together, in our hearing the good news, and our singing of songs. We can be so filled with joy that just like Mary in our reading today, just like Elizabeth in our reading today, we just can't help but opening our mouths and having that good news spill out. This is the Christ we carry within us. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard. But Christ is with us, within us. We have been promised this in baptism. Don't be afraid. But you have been given a promise in baptism. Don't be afraid, but we receive the body and blood of Jesus and carry it inside of us as we leave worship today. Don't be afraid. Don't let your fear rule you. Come together as a community. Come together and know that we share your fears. And we can share our joys too. My soul proclaims the greatness of our God, and my spirit rejoices in me. May it be with you as well. Amen.
Amen.